Citizens of the United States often view military homecomings as a victorious, celebratory time in which veterans get to return back to the comfort of this country. While this may be the case for some, what many fail to see is that there are still a large number of veterans that do not have stable or safe housing waiting for them to return to. In fact, veterans are bringing home higher likelihoods of substance use disorders and mental health issues due to trauma and combat injuries. While U.S. veterans might be less likely to live in poverty than non-veterans, it is still concerning that 1.5 million veterans still live below the poverty line, with an additional 2.4 million veterans well above the poverty line living paycheck to paycheck. Veterans are also subject to several causes and consequences of poverty, such as disabilities, food insecurity, and a lack of social support. Veterans clearly face a host of different poverty-related problems, but the most obvious and prevalent of these is homelessness. Homelessness, as defined by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, can be stated most simply as not having a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. In 2015, veterans made up 12.3% of the homeless adult population in the United States, yet only 9% of the United States population is comprised of veterans. Because homelessness disproportionately affects United States veterans, it is crucial to understand and address this problem, as well as other poverty-related issues, to be able to respect the dignity of every person, but specifically those who have valiantly served our country. Homelessness among veterans was recognized as a serious problem in the early 1980s, but has captured the country's attention more recently with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. While homelessness among veterans has significantly decreased in the past few decades, the issue is not solved. Currently, there are approximately 37,000 veterans homeless on an average night. Homeless veterans most often have demographics that should put them at a lower risk for homelessness, such as better education and a higher likeliness to be married, have health coverage, and a history of employment. However, they are still at a higher risk for homelessness compared to non-veterans, especially in certain subgroups of veterans. The main factors applying to homelessness amongst veterans include substance abuse issues such as alcohol and drug use disorders, as well as mental health problems such as schizophrenia. Surprisingly, post-traumatic stress disorder does not put veterans at more of a risk of homelessness than other psychotic mental health disorders. Other notable risk factors include low income, unemployment, and a lack of social support. It is important to note that while it has been found that veterans are at a higher risk of homelessness, this could be due to a social selection effect, a concept that attributes the higher rates of homelessness to the possibility that men volunteering to serve could be doing so to leave low-income households. If this was the case, then veterans would hypothetically be returning to the same poor economic conditions they were in before serving. The National Veteran Homeless and Other Poverty Experiences Study examined low-income veterans to come to conclusions about causes of housing instability. The study looked at veterans with an annual income within 300% of the federal poverty line and found that this group had an 11% lifetime prevalence of evictions, 8% prevalence of home foreclosures, and 20% prevalence of homelessness. The troubling part about these statistics is that we see anywhere from a 7 to 15% disparity between the low-income veteran population and the general population, depending on the type of housing instability. These statistics could lead us to the conclusion that veterans, especially those with low incomes, are much more likely to experience unstable housing. Although this is still an existing problem, the United States government is taking action to solve the problem of homelessness among veterans. In 2009, the Department of Veteran Affairs announced their goal of ending homelessness among veterans by 2015, which in their words would mean that communities will identify all veterans experiencing homelessness, be able to provide shelter immediately for veterans who want it, be able to help veterans move quickly into permanent housing, and have the capacity to help veterans who become homeless in the future. They did not accomplish this goal, but the VA has made significant progress in assisting veterans and offering resources for them, including providing the largest healthcare system in the United States. One such resource designed to help eligible veterans obtain housing is the HUD-VASH program, in which the Department of Housing and Urban Development assists veterans to obtain rental housing with vouchers, and the VA helps with other services. Although this seems successful, it is important to step back and look at the results of this program. With this specific supportive housing program, we see improvement in housing outcomes for veterans, but not improvements in mental health, substance abuse, social integration, or general quality of life. Therefore, while supportive housing is a great first step in solving poverty-related issues in veterans, it cannot be the only solution. The VA must work to continue making resources available to more veterans, but this problem also speaks to the general affordability of housing. Even if the veterans are not homeless, more than 460,000 are spending over 50% of their income on rent, which will put them at a higher risk for poverty. Therefore, solutions might also need to be more broad in fixing the structural issues of the general lack of affordable housing in the United States. While homelessness is the most prevalent poverty-related struggle among veterans, it is important to mention poverty-related health issues that veterans experience. While research and data on veteran food insecurity varies and is difficult to find, veterans are more likely to have many of the risk factors for food insecurity, such as disabilities and mental health issues. Some specific subgroups of veterans experience this to a higher degree than U.S. veterans overall, including but not limited to Afghanistan and Iraq war veterans, women veterans, and homeless veterans. It was estimated before the pandemic that veterans experienced almost double the rate of food insecurity than the general U.S. population. While the U.S. government and the Department of Veteran Affairs have programs designed to help with food insecurity, it seems as though many veterans are not supported by these. Data shows that around 59% of veterans eligible for the U.S. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program were not enrolled. The Veterans Health Association also has aimed to provide health resources for veterans, but their screening that collects information about the food insecurity status of veterans only includes one question, and they only screen those who receive their care. Therefore, it is important to know that the data we have on food insecurity among veterans is lacking, and this is an area that needs to be improved. Another poverty-related subject very relevant to veterans is disabilities, specifically those acquired while in service. According to the ADA National Network, almost one-third of veterans have a disability, and 12.4% of veterans report having a service-connected disability, meaning it occurred during military service. Veterans with a service-connected disability have the opportunity to apply for disability-related benefits through the government, but this does not guarantee that they will receive them or that the VA will accurately assess their limitations. Veterans who are denied compensation or benefits are more likely to have poor health and functional limitations, experience high levels of social isolation, and overall are not significantly physically or mentally different from those who do receive compensation. Another study found the outcome of these statistics to be that veterans denied benefits have considerably higher rates of poverty than those who receive them. Disabilities can critically impact one's ability to contribute to the workforce, and not being physically able to keep a job has negative poverty-related implications. Around only one-third of veterans reporting different types of disabilities are employed, which is concerning that two-thirds of disabled veterans do not receive an income themselves. This obviously affects income directly, which has connections to several of the problems discussed surrounding veterans, one being food insecurity. Having a disability is a factor commonly associated with food insecurity because it impacts one's ability to make a stable income, so disabled veterans may be at more of a risk for food insecurity. Studies show that forming social ties and having a social support network is a necessary way to lessen the effects of poverty or guard against the possible consequences for low-income individuals. Therefore, not having a good social network can put vulnerable groups such as veterans at a higher risk for poverty. However, especially for groups such as the veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, it is much harder to build and keep social support systems due to the time apart from family and friends and geographical barriers. Studies showed that social isolation upon returning home from military service has a direct effect on homelessness, and that not having strong social support is associated with lifetime homelessness to a greater extent. Similarly, not being married is also a risk factor for homelessness. Having social support from friends and family is crucial for those in poverty, especially for those experiencing homelessness, as oftentimes friends and family are the ones who can temporarily provide housing or other resources. It is also essential to bring attention to the inequalities within veterans in terms of who is more at risk for homelessness and poverty, one of which is gender inequality. It has been shown that women veterans oftentimes face different or more extreme challenges than their male counterparts that put them at more of a risk for homelessness. The VA has found that female veterans experience homelessness and housing stability more so than male veterans do, and they have a much greater likelihood of experiencing homelessness than women who are not veterans. Additionally, a study from 2018 found that 27.6% of female veterans are considered food insufficient. These statistics could be attributed to a number of different causes, but a likely reason is that women veterans are more likely to have experienced sexual trauma than other non-military women, and women veterans report experiencing military sexual trauma at a much higher rate than male veterans. They are also more likely than male veterans to be a single parent, which plays a large role in poverty. Overall, when identifying how to best solve the poverty-related issues associated with veterans, it should be taken into account how they specifically affect certain more vulnerable subgroups like women. To conclude, veterans seem to be at a large disadvantage in terms of homelessness, food insecurity, disabilities, and social support, as well as many other poverty-related issues. However, this does not mean that nothing is being done about it. The Department of Veteran Affairs is putting in work to try to end veteran homelessness, but people should not assume it is no longer a problem. It is worth reevaluating programs to make sure that they are addressing the root causes and risk factors of homelessness, food insecurity, and employment among veterans. Although homelessness and poverty among veterans might be on a decline, it is important to understand how and why this became a problem in the first place, and what we can do to make sure it is never a concern again. We must ask ourselves why the people who courageously served the United States are left on the streets upon their return, and how we can improve the values of this country so that veterans never have to worry about homelessness and other poverty-related issues again.